I like to recite other people's poetry. In fact, this past spring, I participated in a national poetry recitation competition. I watched 50 other students just like myself breathe life into poetry. And it got me to thinking, what's the big deal about this whole self-expression thing anyways? Why do we risk total public humiliation just to get on stage, or create a piece of art, or express ourselves through a creative act? Well, for some, it's not a choice. They're driven. Like Robert Leroy Johnson, he was arguably the father of the Mississippi Delta blues, or Cesar Vallejo, a groundbreaking 20th century Peruvian poet, playwright, writer, and journalist. Each of these men hungered for experience. They burnt brightly but shortly, led intense yet troubled lives. These two men embodied humanity's need for creative self-expression in order to survive. The poet David Rivard was so inspired by these two that he wrote a poem entitled "Not Guilty," which I'd like to recite for you now. The days are dog-eared, the edges torn, ragged, like those pages I ripped once out of library books for their photos of Vallejo and bootless Robert Johnson. A fine needs paying now, it's true, but not by me. I am no more guilty than that thrush is who sits there stripping moss off the wet bark of a tree. A red fleck like his glows at the back of my head, a beauty mark left there by the brain's afterjets. I would not wish for the 3 brains Robert required to double clutch his guitar and chase those sounds he had to know led down and into a troubled, dusky river always. 3 brains did Johnson no earthly good. Neither his nor Vallejo's 4.5 worked right exactly. Oh, bunglers! Oh, banged up pans of disaster! Crying for days, said Cesar, and singing for months. How can I be so strong sometimes, at others weak? I wish to be free, but free to do what? To leave myself behind? To switch channels remotely? Better to sing, not like the bird, but as they sang, Cesar and Robert, with the shocked and seeded sweetness of an apple split open by a meat cleaver. There is a primal need for creative self-expression. We can look back into the earliest parts of human history and see examples of this. The cave paintings were among the earliest forms. Some date back to roughly 40,000 years ago. And Native American beads also share this creative historical aspect, and likewise, ancient pottery served both a decorative and functional purpose. Humans have always been drawn to creating things that are beautiful. You take a 5-year-old, for example. Give her a crayon and a piece of paper, and within seconds, she is drawing. And not something that is simple or dull either. Kids use their imaginations to create amazing things all by themselves. And while it might only look like a few scribbled lines, to her, it's an entire world. So why is creative self-expression so important to our well-being? Well, when we externalize what's on the inside, we create a sort of mirror for ourselves and for others. And this can help us to know ourselves better and ultimately become more comfortable with who we are. Others can connect with what we have to share and ultimately know themselves a little better as well. On a more personal level, however, self-expression can be an act of freedom. The Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi studied the process of creativity, which he calls flow. He defines flow as the mental state of operation in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. That's a mouthful. Flow is a bit like directing all of one's emotional and mental power towards one specific task and really enjoying it. When in flow, we are free of self-judgment, only aware of the thing that is right in front of us. Now, what happens when that self-expression is hindered by self-consciousness or fear of judgment? Oftentimes, when we get too in our heads about our own self-expression, we tend to get discouraged. And ultimately, our creative flow is stifled by our brains thinking too much. We criticize ourselves. We think that others are judging us, and we miss out on being totally in the moment, experiencing flow. But why are we so afraid of others' judgment? How many people here are afraid to get on stage? Raise your hands. Yeah, it's a scary thing. Pat LeDucer, a marriage and family therapist from California, says that for some, the fear of being on stage or expressing ourselves in front of our peers is due to a bad childhood experience. Now, this could be anything from vomiting at a birthday party after eating too much cake, to misspelling a word at a school spelling bee, or even receiving too much praise from home or school. For others, this fear is due to an adult performance that didn't go well, or one that didn't seem to go well. The next time you get up to perform, you remember that bad experience, and you are far more anxious about getting up to perform again. In either case, our brain, the survival part of our brain, evaluates the situation as dangerous. And that's what sparks the fight, flight, or freeze response from your brain. And this can manifest in the form of shaking or twitching, a quickened heart rate, cold sweats, forgetting what you were about to say, and possibly even throwing up or some other sick feeling. Now, this might explain why most people are afraid to get on stage or perform for a group at the drop of a hat, or even when given ample time to prepare. However, it doesn't explain how the same fight, flight, or freeze response from getting on stage is the exact same reaction your brain has when confronted with a saber-toothed tiger 10 feet away. This part of your brain is priming you to fight, flee from, or freeze and pray for dear life in front of this man-eating beast. Because really, what's the worst that can happen when we express ourselves in front of our peers? Well, we'll say something stupid, or weird, or wrong. They won't like us, we'll be rejected, and we'll be shut out. As humans, we evolved to live in groups, not only for comfort and support, but for survival. So being accepted by those around us is extremely important, because if you were cut off from the group or shunned, there was a very good possibility that you would soon die alone somewhere in the mountains. So in effect, the fear of being on stage or expressing ourselves to those around us goes far beyond a bad party experience. The need for acceptance is written in our genetic code for survival. But then again, who cares? We aren't living as prehistoric man anymore. while we do feel it is necessary to be accepted, we are also inexorably compelled to create as individuals. So, I ask, what excites you? What are you curious about? Is it cards? Is it knitting? Is it acting, singing, dancing, pottery? Whatever it may be, find a safe environment to express yourself in. Devote some scheduled time to this and just delve deep into the flow. Forget all about your worldly troubles and immerse yourself in the moment. Because when you come back, you will be a little different. And the world will be a little different. You see, we cannot progress as individuals or as a species without self-expression. Change and growth are the centerpiece of our beings. And at the core of change and growth is discovery and expression. E.E. Cummings perhaps put it best. To be nobody but yourself in a world that tries night and day to make you just like everybody else is to fight the greatest battle there ever is to fight, and never stop fighting. Thank you very much.